Hello again, and welcome to another episode of /Roleplay, and this is chapter 4 of the VTM Vampire the Masquerade LARP. Sadly, this video is being done on Monday, not Sunday night. And if you previously just watched my /camp for today, it was a very mentally draining game session. And we're going to start that off by saying, I really hate puzzles. Especially, like, mental mind game puzzles in which my character could potentially die from. But, again, welcome to VTM. So, on the last episode, we were recapping, trying to figure out what was going on at the homeless shelters between the company of Astis and 5-Star Food Chain. So, this week, we have unfortunately been trying to unravel the exact same thing. So, to start off the game session, it was me and Steve again. So, Mr. Whom, I think he's making a Doctor Who reference, but I'm not sure. So yeah. So, Mr. Whom. And we were kind of like, well, we're still trying to figure out what's going on. So we still had the can of food that we stole from the homeless shelter the week prior. And we decided that we were going to do a test on mice. So we ended up getting 5 mice, and we fed 3 of them the food from 5-Star. 2 of them were our controls to figure out maybe if it was airborne, maybe if that's how one person gets sick and then it just kind of spreads to everyone else, or if everyone has to eat this food. So, later in the game session, we're doing a little bit more research, and I contacted a lot of my influences and my contacts, and was like, hey, can you get me more information on this Astis company? Because something smells fishy, and it's not just the food. So, as I'm doing this, I'm like doing more research, and I'm like, okay, so the information in which we have is that the head of the company is named Sir Astis, so it's C-E-R-A-S-T-U-S. So, Sir Astis. And it seems like he's the CEO of the company. And the company has only been here for 1 to 2 years in the United States. And it was mainly funded out of, like, Africa and the Middle East. And it's mainly an overseas company. But they kind of just started a branch here. And then, let's see. I'm trying to figure out, like, because there's, like, a lot of crime. There's, like, obviously, like, companies are like, hey, people are dying, and it's kind of wiping out the homeless population, and this is going to be great, because then we can just move our business in there, and it make everything seem better. So, like, the media is covering this as if it's, like, a heroic story of how to kind of revamp the city. So, we're, like, looking into that. So we have, like, more security that is just popping up everywhere because more crime, all sorts of people are going, like, crazy. Then we have this Astis company that's just, like, showed up out of nowhere. Great. Now we have the 5-Star, like, company who we're still like, okay, we have these mice, and we're gonna figure out who's causing what, because we thought, and actually, step back for a second, in-game, like, me and Steve made a mistake. We thought that the 5-Star was only supplying food, and that Astis was only supplying, medicine. We figured out, though, because, like, I got my rumor sheet for today, and it was like, wait, Astis is doing food and medicine? Really? Because, last game, we only heard they were doing medicine. but it was something apparently we looked over. So this game, we were like taking a whole different approach to this. So we were like, dude, this name is coming up more and more, and we need to figure out what's going on. So we found out a little bit about the companies, and I was like, look, something's definitely going on. So I like, again, I did my influence, and I was like, hey, can you get me the addresses for more of these companies? Like, can you give me the headquarters? Can you give me like the factory? Can you give me the warehouses? Is there like private addresses that you can get for me? And my contact was like, yeah, I'll get them for you. I'll call you back. So I was like, awesome, that works. And he was like, later on in the game, I missed a phone call from my contact, and I was like, oh, interesting. So it's like a voicemail, and he's like, hey, by the way, I got you the information for this, and unfortunately I was digging up some more information and found something about the 5-star company for food, and here's the list of company names that I think you would be interested in. They kept popping up when I did the research for 5-star. And unfortunately, there was a hacker program that, like, shut me down, and I'm going into hiding now. Okay, bye. I'm like, what? So, now we're taking 2 approaches. Apparently, Astis isn't just our main focus, it's, like, both the companies. And I'm like, oh, dear God. Oh, dear God. Like, our characters are just being split into, like, several directions, and I'm just like, what is going on? So, like, I told, like, the sheriff, like, okay, so you have the sheriff, and then you have, like, the deputy. So I called up the deputy, who was like, you wanted more information about this? Okay, here's more information about this. This is what we got. And she's like, okay, well, contact me when you have more. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I got a storyteller hint that there was apparently, like, a really obvious clue on my rumor sheet. And I'm sitting there, like, and this is where the headache came on. Because I'm, like, reading through my rumor sheet. And I'm like, there is nothing, what is on here? Like, there's no clues on here. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is going on? So, like, I'm getting, like, the player is getting personally frustrated. My character is getting frustrated because obviously she can't figure it out either. And I'm just like, dude, I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of not having the correct answers. So, I got a text message that said, a rose with, what is it? Like, a rose with another name is still just as sweet. And I'm like, okay. Thank you for the hint. So we're looking into the name of something. And I'm like, okay. So I, like, relay the information to Steve because I'm, like, I hit that frustrated point where I was just like, I can't fucking think right now. I really can't. So, like, you see, like, all of, like, the weird, like, squiggle bubbles, like, popping up, like, over my head. So I'm like, Steve figured this out. So I told him the information, and he was like, what's the name of the CEO? And I'm like, Sir Astis. So, like, I had already done a Google search of his name. And this is completely out of character, and something that screwed me over in character was the storyteller assumed that my tablet had autofill. Well, it was a function that I turned off because I didn't really like autofill. If I'm going to search for something, I don't want, like, all of my search results, like, popping up. Which also means then it doesn't, like, correct it. So I put, like, SER space ASTUS. Well, it was, like, could not find. It didn't redirect me to a different thing. This is out of character, by the way. Just saying. So Steve, on his phone, was like, hey, I found something. And then he found out, like, the name of the guy, Sir Astis, was actually a mythological beast by a different name. Like, literally, for ASTUS, you just changed the U to a different letter. Well, my tablet wasn't autocorrecting it because I turned off that filter on Google. And so I'm like royally pissed because I would never have figured this out. And the storyteller's like, oh, shit. He's literally like, I'm sorry, I didn't figure that would happen. And I'm like, really? Like, I just hit my wit's end, like, right there. I was just like, I'm just gonna sit here. I'm just gonna sit here and let Steve figure it out. Because I was like, I'm done. So, he's, like, going through and he's figuring out all of this information. And, like, I have a whitewash board that I did my D&D game on. So I'm, like, making all these flowcharts of all the information that I have, and it was really cool. But, so I, like, called back Sarah's again, which is the deputy, and I was like, hey, I got you some information. And then I was like, Steve, here. Because I was like, I didn't want to deal with it. I was just like, just you deal with it. So he was, like, talking about how it's a serpent, and it's, like, a horned creature, and all this kind of stuff. And apparently, like, that instantly means in VTM that it's a set type, a follower of set. And so she's like, oh shit, like, cursing up a storm, like, oh, this isn't good, blah, 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 like, the sheriff's gonna want to know about this. And so, like, we get a hold of the sheriff on a burn number. And so I'm like, hey, we got this information, what do you want me to do with this? And he's like, go figure out more. At this point, I, as the player, just, like, hit my critical mass, because I'm like, I've been seriously trying to figure this out for, like, ever. And I personally don't want to be, like, very confrontational when it comes down to this situation, because obviously this person's, like, a deity of some sort. So I'm like, I don't want to get my character killed now, like, at all. So we're like, well, we'll just go investigate some of these addresses, because we had 2 warehouses that Trevor got me, which was my contact, and then the corporate address, which of course was obvious. You could just Google the corporate address, but the warehouses, however, like, he got me the addresses for. And we had the South Side and Morova. So 2 different locations, 2 different types of locations. Like, you had one that was, like, South Side behind Carson Street, and the other one that was kind of like the industrial park up in Morova. So, like, one has people near it and one doesn't. So we're like, we're gonna go with the one that has people near it, because if something happens, like, they're not gonna have that much security, obviously, because they don't want to make people suspicious. Oh shit, well, there's a tank sitting out front, what's going on? So we're like, okay, we're gonna go to the Carson Street one. Well, I'm trying to explain to Steve that we can't just do a frontal approach. We have to be, like, sneaky and stealthy and, like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, we can't just go barging in there. So we see when we get to the facility that there's, like, a function going on. There's something going on at the facility, because there's a couple in a very nice car that got pulled up to the front of the building, and they had, like, security passes. They went through the gate and into the building, and they weren't security or anything, and they were in, like, really nice clothes. Like, the woman was wearing high heels. Obviously a function of some sort. So Steve's like, I don't see any guards. He's like, I'm gonna find a hidden spot in this fence. And we're like, dude, there's seriously not a dark spot or a hidden spot of this fence. We're right off of Carson Street. Have you never been to Carson Street? There are people everywhere. There's, like, a club literally a block away, and they have giant lights, and I mean, it's just, like, it's busy. He's like, I'm gonna be stealthy and find a dark spot. And we're just like, oh no. So, of course, I'm, like, standing back, and I'm like, you go do what you want to do. I'm gonna stand right here, and I'll be like, look out. So, in other words, I didn't want to get caught up in everything that was going on. So, he has, like, these claws, because he's a gangrel. So he's like, I'd go to bend down and tie my shoe, and then I slice my claws straight up the fence. And as soon as he did that, the alarms went off, and guards started pouring out, like 4 guards, keep that in mind, come pouring out of the building. And he's like, I can take him, roar. This was the best part of the game session. Best part of the game session. So he's like, I can take him, roar. And he starts, like, charging to them. I'm like, as soon as the alarm goes off, I'm like, this is obfuscate 1, level 1, which means I can stand somewhere, like, stand in place somewhere. I can't move, I can't speak, I can't do anything, I can just observe. So I'm just, like, standing in the back of the alleyway, watching everything that's going on. So, I'm like, I'm getting duck out of fudge. So, he's, like, fighting these 4 security officer things. And he gets, like, tased with a taser gun 4 times. Actually, I think it was, like, 3 times. Because I think he, like, dodged one or something. But he got hit with him. And he's like, how much damage did that do? And, like, the storyteller was like, yeah, you take 1 more hit, you're incapacitated. And he was like, what? Like, his whole world just got shook. He was like, what? Like, what? And he was like, yeah. He's like, what do you do? And he was like, I spend a blood point, I heal for a second, and then I run the opposite direction. I'm like, yes. Because literally, if they had, like, anything else in, like, the supernatural spectrum, he probably would have died. And I'm just like, storyteller was being nice. Storyteller was being really nice. So, literally, Steve's character comes, like, running back, and he's like, shit. He's, like, completely, like, upset. And you could tell, like, partly that Steve himself was upset. And I'm like, I told you. I told you so. Like, I wouldn't let him live it down, because I'm like, are you humble yet? I'm like, because the shit that we're dealing with, literally anything could kill us. So, like, I actually, like, skipped ahead a little bit, but during the whole scene with, like, the security guards and stuff like that, and as he was running away, and he, like, managed to get through the fence, like, I noticed it, but he didn't notice it. There was, like, a ripple in, like, the concrete, that it was just, like, a speed bump appeared out of nowhere, and, like, 3 of the guards fell. And then, as soon as, like, the one guy, like, breached the end of the fence, and, like, could have gotten Steve, he just, like, disappeared. And then, like, the 3 other guards just disappeared. And we're like, holy shit. There's something going on. So, like I said, now we get to the point where he was, like, really disappointed, and he was like, oh. So in the car, I'm, like, calling up Sarah's, and I'm like, dude, this is what happened to us. Like, seriously, this is what the fuck happened to us. Like, what? And then she's like, there wasn't any breaches, were there? And I was like, not with us. Like, not from us. But there was breaches from them. And she's like, what? And I'm like, they just fucked out of existence. And then she was like, oh. Well, where were you? And I was like, I sent her, like, I said the address. And I'm like, she's like, yeah, there's something that lives around that area that probably just didn't want the existence of supernatural things being known. So you're lucky. You're lucky that he saved your ass. And we're just like, oh. See, I know, as a player, I know exactly who she's talking about. As a character, though, I'm like, I have no idea. So, because I knew the club that we were down from, like, what it was and who owns it, and he's like this super massively powerful vampire that lives in the city. So I'm just like, yeah, I knew what happened. The character doesn't. So, like, we get back to the hotel room, and I'm like, dude, I'm, like, seriously tired of dealing with, like, Mr. Whom's, like, I'm gonna go get him attitude. So I'm just like, dude, I'm gonna go sleep for the night. I'm done. I'm seriously done. And, like, I'm literally, like, as soon as we were done with the game, I was just like, oh, dear God. I'm just gonna go pass out for a century. Because I felt so drained. I was just like, this was like one of the most emotionally and like mentally intense games that like I was just like, are you kidding me? Like I was so tired of not getting any information, like no matter what I was doing. But again, this is my first Vampire the Masquerade game. And it's only me and Steve. So it means there's 2 absolutely noob players playing this campaign. And the storyteller even said himself, like, this plot that we're on right now was meant for all 5 of us to go through and do. It was not meant for, like, just the 2 noobs to be playing with. So I'm like, oh dear God. I'm like, I'm just so glad for that game session to be over. There was a highlight of that game session, which was, like, us trying to buy back the drugs that Dirge, which is Josh's character, like, sold out on the streets, which was the drugs that we got from the medical facility, like, the first game. Or second game, I can't remember. But I had to go back and re-buy those drugs to figure out, like, what was going on. And the storyteller was like, yeah, you're going in for a drug deal. You should probably put some intimidating clothes on. Because I was dressed in my GER t-shirt. Because, like, my character, she is a venturer. She's a venturer. And she doesn't dress like one, though. She's, like, very, like, alternative, punk rock. Like, she just wants, she's the type of person who's like, I'm just gonna keep smiling because it confuses people. So, like, she's been playing off all these other clans. Like, people are like, oh, you're a Malkavian. She's like, yep. And then it's just like, she just wants to be kept from being, like, figured out. So she literally, like, throws everyone for a loop with her clothing. And she does it on purpose. So he's like, you're gonna want to put more intimidating clothes on than that. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I come charging upstairs. Everything that I could find that was leather pants, leather corset, leather overtop, belts with, like, ammo across them. I put, like, a leather collar on. I was like, everything that I could possibly find in my wardrobe that would be, like, intimidating, I put on. And I walked downstairs and everyone was just like, yeah, we're not gonna say anything right now. And I'm like, yep. You continue game with me wearing this. I'm just like, and then of course, as soon as the scene was over, I was like, I have to get out of this. This is so uncomfortable. So like, I'm walking upstairs and I'm like, I put this back on and like my comfy black pants, and I'm just like, I come walking back downstairs and I'm just like, yeah. I'm like, that is so uncomfortable. So it was funny. It was absolutely hilarious. But I did manage to get like the drugs back, which was great. So, and then hopefully we now have 3 rats that have the 5-star food. We have 1 rat that has the Astis food, and then 1 rat that took the antibiotics from Astis. So hopefully, like, next week we can figure out which rat's going fucking crazy and figure out, like, what's going on with these vermin. So this was a really long episode, unfortunately. And I'm just like, after recalling all that, I'm just like, I need to sit down and take a breather. I need to go do some yoga for a little bit and clear my mind and be like, that was a very frustrating game session. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this recap and have enjoyed enjoyed my suffering from that game session. But until next time, guys, have a good one, and I shall see you later. Bye-bye.